Hi everyone, so this video is going to be about how to read and crochet with a left-handed graph, specifically my version of a left-handed graph. I'm slowly working through all of my patterns to include a left-handed version, and so this will teach you how to crochet using that left-handed version. So before I start, I'm just going to talk about the differences between a left-handed and right-handed graph. So in a left-handed graph, the starting point starts in the bottom left because a left-handed crocheter will crochet left to right. And then in a right-handed graph, you can see that the starting point is in the bottom right because a right-handed crocheter crochets right to left. The other big difference between the two is that in a left-handed graph, the image is mirrored. This is because when you are working this up, you are essentially working up the back side of the piece. So you'll start with carrying your yarn on these wrong side or left side rows here. So you'll carry your yarn on these ones towards you instead of away from you, how you would do typically on, or if you were using a right-handed graph. I will get more into that when I actually start crocheting, but those are the biggest differences between the two. Okay, now to get into actually crocheting using this left-handed graph, you're going to need, I'm personally going to be using these just 2 mini skeins. I split from this skein and took this. So 2 mini skeins and then of white and then a blue or whatever accent color you want the boot to be. Plus I'm using a 4mm hook. Size really doesn't matter, just make sure it matches the yarn. Okay, so I'm gonna start by chaining. I have 14 here, so I'm going to chain 15 so that I have that +1 to turn. So first make a slip knot, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So now that you have this chain, you can start working this first row. So this first row is just a white row. So I am going to just crochet 14 white stitches into the chain, and then I'll meet you back once we get to right here. Okay, so we've just finished that first row. So I'm gonna cross it off. Now starting on row 2, you can see it's on the right, and that is the right side. So all of these rows that are on the right are right side rows, or RS, and this indicates the front side. So you should be seeing the front of the piece when you start working on these rows. So this means this will be the front of our piece, and we'll be crocheting left to right alongside the front. But when you're reading this, you'll be reading it right to left, so kind of like the opposite. So because we're reading right to left, I'm going to do 1 white stitch, pull it up, don't finish. Now we're going to add in this blue, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3 blue stitches. So here's how you would carry your yarn when you're on an RS or right side row, meaning the front side of the piece. You're going to carry it away from you, so on the back side. So 1, and if you're trying to weave in that end from where you've just added in the color, this is how you do that. You go into the stitch and underneath, if you can see that, and then grab the yarn, and it kind of holds it there to basically weave it in. So this is my 3rd blue stitch. Now I'm going to do what is called a float, where I pull the white yarn over, grab it with my middle finger, swap to this other middle finger, and then I can pull it through. And that helps with tension, just using your middle finger to hold it so it doesn't pull too much and snag. So now we're going to do 1 more white stitch before switching back to blue. And now we're going to do 8 blue stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I'm going to introduce the other white skein so I don't have to make a large float like that. So grabbing this yarn. We're still on an RS row, or right side / front side row. So adding in the yarn from the back, holding that with my middle finger, yarn over, swapping to the other middle finger to hold it in place, pull through, and then pull that tail over to start tucking it in. Chain 1 and turn. So now we've just finished row 2. Row 3 is the exact same as row 2, so you can really just copy what you see here. But just for reference, you'll be reading left to right now. So starting here and then reading the stitches this way. So that is 1 white stitch. And now because we're on a wrong side row, or the back side of the piece, you're going to pull that working yarn towards you so that no ends hang out in the front. Now it is 8 blue stitches. So something that can be really common when you float the yarn up is that you'll miss the stitch, because if you can see, the end was kind of covering it there, so I almost didn't see it. But just make sure that you're accounting for that. And especially with my patterns, they all come with a written pattern, and I really recommend using that, especially on these areas like this where it's a little bit hard to count how many are there. It's just like a good reference. I always use the graph and the written pattern when I am crocheting things. Pulling that working yarn towards me, grabbing this other white skein, 1 white stitch, pull that working yarn towards you, and then 3 blue stitches, working yarn towards you, 1 white stitch to finish the row off, and flip. So you can see what appears to be the front side, and it is working up as the back side of the graph. So just to really hound it home, the graph is a visual representation of the back side. So whatever the front side of your piece is, it should look like the opposite or a mirrored version of the actual graph. So you can see the heel here is on the left, whereas in the graph it's on the right. So I'm going to cross off row 3 since we just did that. Now moving on to row 4, it is basically the same except you don't do that white stitch right there. So I'm just going to fully crochet across here with blue. So 1 white stitch, the working yarn is on the back now. Pull up your blue stitch and then work that fully across. Well, up until there's 1 stitch left. then finish with 1 white stitch. Chain 1, and now we're going to turn. So I'm going to be pulling this skein over so that it doesn't tangle with the other ones. Now we are going to be on a wrong side row, and that's because it's on the left side. So if it helps, I can write W, S. Okay, now we're gonna be starting on this wrong side row because it's on the left side and it's an odd number. We're gonna be doing 2 white stitches. We'll be reading left to right. So 1, 2, and then pull that working yarn towards you. And now switch to blue. And go all the way down until that one last white stitch. So that is 1, 2. Pull that working yarn towards you. And one last white stitch. Chain 1, and now we're gonna flip. It's best to do yarn management as you're crocheting. Otherwise you'll just continuously let it get tangled, and then it sucks. You can kind of prevent it by seeing the way that you're like pulling your yarn or like changing them, if that even makes sense. And that helps predict a little bit on how you should move the skeins. So we have just finished row 5, and now we're gonna do row 6, which is a right side row because it's on the right, and that means it's the front side of the piece. So you do see the front side of the piece, and it is a mirrored version of the graph. So reading right to left now, I'm gonna do 1 white stitch and then 2 blue. Before I do 4 white now, so I'm just gonna float this across. Pull it a little tighter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now switching back to that blue, I'm gonna float it over. And do 4 blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 white. Chain 1 to turn. Now we're gonna turn. So we have just finished row 6, and now we'll start on row 7, which is a wrong side row, meaning the back side. So we'll be reading left to right. So 4 white stitches. Pull that working yarn towards you. 6 blue stitches. Pull that working yarn towards you. Grab that white. Do one white stitch. One blue stitch. And then, two blue stitches. And then finish with the one white stitch. Chain one and turn. So we've just finished row 7. Now row 8, which is a right side row. So you'll be reading right to left. You can see I'm on the front of the piece again, carrying my yarn behind me. So one white stitch, 2 blue, switch to white, now back to blue, and we're finishing with 5 blue stitches, ending 1 earlier from the previous row. And you can see here the stitch got a little loose, but you don't have to worry about that. You can always finish it as long as you haven't used this working yarn yet. You can still just pull it to tighten it a little. So 5 white stitches. Now flipping. Oops. Just finished row 8. Now starting on row 9, which is a repeat of row 8, except on the back side, we'll do the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull that working yarn towards you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull that working yarn towards you. 1 white stitch. Pull that blue back over. 2 blue. 2. Finish with a white stitch. And flip again. So that's what it should look like so far. We've just finished row 9. Row 10 is a repeat of row 9, except it's on the front side because it is a right side row. 1 white, 2 blue, because we're reading right to left. Pull the white over. 2, 3, 4, 5 blue, and ending with 5 white. So we've just finished row 10. This is what it should look like. We're gonna do 2 more rows of just blue for the boot before finishing with an all white row. So flipping over, you'll see the back side of the piece because you are on a wrong side row. Goodness. Okay, now reading left to right, you have 5 white stitches and then 8 blue and 1 white. So 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On a wrong side row, pulling the working yarn towards you. Now we're gonna do 8 blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, finishing with 1, and turning. So we've just finished row 11. Now we're gonna do our last row of color work, which is row 12. And this just so happens to be a right side or front side row. So we'll be reading right to left. One, and then once again, 8 blue, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, before finishing with 5 white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we can cut the other 2 skeins we will no longer be using off. Just make sure to leave a little bit of a tail to weave that in. So I'm going to get rid of the blue now and pull that white one away. So that is row 12 done. Now row 13, wrong side row, so you see the back of the piece. You are going to just crochet 14 white across. I'm going to try and weave some of that in, so I'm pulling it across, if you can see. And then I'm going to kind of go under so that this yarn grabs it like that. Now, if you were going to add a dowel, you would not finish off and you would just attach it in using a single crochet or whatever stitch you prefer. But I am going to cut it off because this is all I want. And then that's the finished piece. So as you can see, it is the opposite of the graph. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, or you can DM me on Instagram. Yeah, let me know which graphs you're most interested in seeing turned into a left-hand one first, and I'll prioritize those. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this helps.